Good morning. So Monday is the day of the week, the weekday where I'm at home, and I'm experimenting with different locations this morning. This morning from my basement. Now that doesn't mean that I take a break from my daily listening. And the psalm this morning in my daily listening to the Bible is Psalm 95. And whether you're at home, whether you're at work, wherever you are, staying rooted in God's Word during times like this is absolutely essential. Even maybe especially on those mornings when it's raining and cloudy and you just don't feel like it. And let me tell you why. Because Psalm 95 begins with a very uplifting kind of a tone. Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. And it's very encouraging, very uplifting. But then in the second half of the psalm, it says, "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as it was as at Meribah, on the day at Massa in the wilderness, when your fathers put me to the test and put me to the proof, though they had seen my work. For 40 years I loathed that generation and said, they are a people who go astray in their heart, and they have not known my ways." Now, what the psalmist here is referencing is when the people of Israel um, failed to believe God's promises, and God judged them ultimately by having them wander 40 years in the desert. See, what had happened, remember, is God had brought the Israelites out of Egypt, brought them out of slavery in miraculous, powerful ways. And then, increasingly, they doubted him. One of the incidents that's being referenced here is when they didn't believe that God would provide for them the water they needed. And Moses, at God's command, brought water out of a rock to provide for them. But it was the doubt of the Israelites that made God so concerned. And then ultimately, what's being referenced here that led to 40 years of wandering in the desert is when the people of God failed to believe God's promise that he could defeat the enemies that were in the promised land that he had given them. And they were afraid of those people. And they said, no, we can't go in. We can't take what God has given to us because we are afraid of the people who are there, even though God had promised to deliver them. And they're good reminders for us in that, because we too can look at God and fail to believe his promise of provision, like the water in the desert, and his promise of deliverance. Now, those are two things that I think both of us or both of those things are things that all of us can struggle to believe at this particular moment. In the midst of the uncertainty of another week of being in self-quarantine, will God provide for us when we're not working in similar ways? Or overall, as a culture and as an economy, will God provide for us? Right? The promise of God in the midst of the desert was that he would provide for his people. And will God deliver us? Will he ever bring us out of this? Will he bring us into a place of safety and security? And of course, the promise that God had made to the people of the Israelites is that he would do exactly that. They failed to believe that. Now, one way or the other, whether it is economic prosperity in the near future or not, God has promised through Jesus Christ to bring us into an eternal promised land. He will provide for his people, and he will deliver them ultimately, fully, and completely. That's when we can go back to the beginning of the psalm and say with absolute sincerity, "Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hands are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are also his. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand." Have a great day.